Right, everyone. Good morning. This will be our first Washington and North Idaho fire briefing of the year. My name is Valerie, and I will be representing Spokane, and we have Jeff over in Seattle. So before I begin, I just want for everyone's awareness, this briefing is being recorded. By joining and participating, you are giving consent to be part of this recorded briefing per the NOAA Office of Chief Information Officer Privacy Act. And to be able to post this recording for web access, please keep your camera off and microphone muted until the end when we open up for questions after the recording. This will ensure a smooth return of our recording and speedy turnaround to posting it on the web. Thank you for joining, and let's get started. So as you can see right now, just northwest, we are under an area of high pressure ridge, and this is bringing our very hot and dry conditions for today and tomorrow. And then we will start seeing that ridge flatten tomorrow and into later in the week with a return to onshore flow and moisture bringing us cooler and also windier conditions. And looking for a fire weather summary, I will pass it over to Jeff in Seattle to talk about the west side first.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. Yeah, so for Western Washington, we're still under one more day of elevated fire weather concerns with hot and dry conditions. Basically, especially up and along the interior, the I-5 corridor from Vancouver up through Bellingham, and then also in the Cascade Valleys. Fortunately, though, we're not really seeing critical min RHs. So we're just seeing the elevated concerns here with hot and dry. But, we will still see these fuels continuing to dry through this pattern. And that will continue, into the rest of this week as well. Temperatures will be cooling on Western Washington, closer to normal, but still without significant precipitation, we are still seeing these fuels dry. So that's it from the west side. So I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. So for Eastern Washington, we are seeing the similar very hot and dry conditions for today and tomorrow. That is really drying out those fuels. And we are under critical conditions for Central Washington, particularly zones 705 and 706, which is like the Wenatchee area and the Waterville Plateau, for winds and low relative humidities for Monday and Tuesday. And then as we get into later in the week, we'll start seeing temperatures cooling Wednesday with a stronger push of winds, but conditions will still be pretty dry, and might see a little more widespread elevated fire weather conditions, and then continuing into Thursday. But then once we get into the weekend, it'll start cooling off with less winds and higher relative humidities, but we also start seeing chances for thunderstorms emerging Wednesday afternoon, mostly across our northern zones, northeast and eastern Washington and far north Idaho and North Idaho, and then kind of a little more widespread on Thursday with higher chances, but then kind of conditions just continuing through the weekend, rainy, cool. So for our problem of the week, our main concern will be the winds and RHs Monday through Thursday. We do have red flag warnings out for zone 705 and 706, and then also the Pendleton forecast area also has red flag warnings out for their kind of Yakima Valley and Columbia Basin zones as well, where we're expecting winds 10 to 25 miles per hour with gusts up to 30 miles per hour in the later afternoons and early evenings, with minimum RHs to 10 to 20%. And then as we get through Wednesday, that's when we start seeing the start of a cool down, and we'll see a stronger push of winds. So with those critical conditions might expand into the Moses Lake area as well, or zone 707. And Those zones are the only ones that our partners, our fire partners, have in collaboration with them, have deemed their fuels ready to carry fire. Is where we're issuing our red flag warnings for right now. So in the areas that are yellow, like Mahal Valley, Ogaga Valley, if you're from that area and are aware of your fuels, get in touch with Steve Bodnar so he could have some more insight. But those areas will be elevated through this week as well. Yeah. So as we look forward into our our hazards out, so we have kind of widespread heat highlights out. Seattle has them for their interior areas, and then we have widespread heat advisories out through Tuesday, 9 p.m. And then we have excessive heat warnings out for the Wenatchee area and also for the Moses Lake area, and the red flag warnings that we already touched on. For just overview of the weather, you see today is going to be the hottest day of the week with mid to upper 80s on the west side, even some 90s as you get further into southwest Washington. But then for eastern Washington, especially central Washington, we're seeing temperatures in the upper 90s to low 100s, and then upper 90s for the rest of eastern Washington, and then the 90s for North Idaho. Our minimum RHs for today, as we can see, pretty low percentages across central Washington, 10 to 15%, with some breezier winds through this afternoon. It's more in the evening and afternoon where we're starting to see that peak in central Washington and the Cascade Gaps and into the Waterville Plateau. For day two, I'll touch on the temperatures and the RHs once we get to the trends, but just wanting to show how these winds, these breezier conditions will continue Tuesday afternoon through the Cascade Gaps. And into Whitman County as well. For day three, again, that's when we're expecting the cool down to begin, and we'll see a stronger push of winds expanding eastward into the Moses Lake area and over Columbia Basin into the Spokane area as well. And then also Wednesday is when we start seeing the prop thunder chances emerge. So Wednesday, it'll be primarily across far northeast Washington and boundary in northern Bonner County and North Idaho. And then for day four, for Thursday, that's when we're expecting kind of the higher probabilities of lightning, mainly across our northern counties and northern zones, with 10 to 25% chance in the afternoon. And then Friday as well, it kind of expands further west into the North Cascades, and then also encompassing most of North Idaho as well. And just those chances continue through Saturday and into Sunday as well, as we kind of see just multiple weather systems move through. And for the trends, I'll pass it back to Jeff to talk about the west side.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. So yeah, if you look at the temperature trend, this is just for Seattle, but you can see those peaks going down through the week, showing our decrease in temperatures as the week moves on. Again, we're not expecting any critical RH trends here. So really the warmest day is today with, still a little warm on Tuesday, but temperatures getting back to normal through the week. So that trend covers much of Western Washington with that. So that was it on trends. Okay, Valerie?
Thank you. So for Central Washington, Eastern Washington, I'm going to show India. That's where our red flags are for Monday and Tuesday. So we can see, like as Jeff mentioned, today is going to be the hottest day of the week, and we'll start seeing a gradual decline in the temperatures. But I wanted to point out the relative humidities for today and tomorrow, and even into Wednesday as well. We can see our min RHs in the 10 to 15%. And then as for Monday night into Tuesday morning, we're really not going to see great recoveries with very warm low temperatures in the upper 60s and low 70s across central Washington, and very poor RH recoveries, max RHs in the 30 to 40% range. But we'll see RHs gradually coming up as the winds start to increase, but we will see a couple hours this later in the afternoon into early evening where there is that overlap of the very low RHs and the highest winds, peak winds. So that trend is represents most of central Washington very well. Poor RHs kind of continue into Wednesday morning as well. And then even through the week, even though we're going to start to see cooler temperatures, it'll still remain pretty warm with RHs in the 20% range and maximum RHs in the 50 to 60% range. And for North Idaho, we're not seeing the stronger winds there in our lower levels where our fuels aren't deemed ready yet, but we will see the hot and dry conditions just furthering the drying of the fuels with breezier just afternoon winds and low RHs in the low 20, upper teens % range with a bit better recoveries overnight. And then you can see as we just move through the week, the probability of precipitation does increase. Not one day is looking like a slam dunk for precipitation. It's more going to be showery nature and not seeing any signals of just the widespread wetting rains. Would be mostly showery and isolated, scattered nature. And then for our temperature outlook, for 8 to 14 days, CPC is kind of highlighting below to near normal across Western Washington and to Central Washington, and then leaning above average for temperatures for Eastern Washington and North Idaho, but then also leaning above average for precipitation. But again, not seeing super strong signals of like widespread wetting rains. It might be just more, especially in the Eastern Washington, North Idaho, might be a bit showery in nature. And as always, you could go to weather.gov/otx/fire dashboard for a self-briefing. Our graphics are updating as our forecast updates, or you can watch our recorded briefings on that page as well. So I'm going to stop this recording.